So our next speaker is not just what I like to call an energy philosopher. He's also a dear friend, and he's also one of the 5 men who are responsible for you all being here today. He's actually one of the curators of this conference. He's a dear friend. He grew up in Niger, realized that not everyone has equal access to energy, but he uses his very creative mindset to think about the energy transition in a totally different way. So not just moving to wind and to solar, but really radically changing the energy system. Please give Arash Aazami a warm round of applause. Woo-hoo!
Hello, tomorrow. So, how'd you like the conference so far? How'd you like the conference so far? It's been such a ride. 2.5 months ago, this was just an idea. And look at us right here, right now. And it's such an honor that I'm allowed to share a few words with you from this stage. Thank you. So, energy Buddhism, it says, because everything is connected. But what is energy? What is energy? 16 years ago, I didn't know much about energy. I'm a musician by education. Then I rolled into internet tech stuff. And then in 2006, I set foot in this elaborate world of energy, and I didn't know what it was. And then I realized that my colleagues neither. Actually, they didn't know what energy was either. And it was such a vague concept. Energy is the ability to do work. Energy is the ability to get something done. I learned that years after I started in energy. Now, if we don't know what energy is, even as energy professionals, how can we tell whether somebody's using a lot of it or just very little? How can we tell whether somebody's conscious about their energy or not? And energy is so fundamental. And in the meantime, as you just saw, Stephen Donziger makes very clear that many of the large companies that we rely on today are not with us. They're against us. They're not with the world, they're against the world. Energy reality looks like this. Today, we are burning 1 million times more fossil fuels than the Earth is producing. It took the Earth 500 million years to build up the resources that we're using today, oil, coal, and gas. It takes us 500 years to finish them. So that means that the speed at which we are depleting the world's resources is a factor 1 million too fast. This means that we need to reduce fossil fuel consumption by 99.9999%. That's a challenge. Another energy-related crisis is shown here on the Global Peace Index. This map of the world shows the amount of peace that is in every country in the world. Now, if you live in a green-colored country, you're very lucky that you live there. If you live in a red-colored country, you're going to do everything within your power to move to a green country. And what we did a couple of years ago was started making overlays on this map of the places where we get the most fossil fuels from. And then you see an interesting correlation. Energy and conflict are married to each other. Why? Because we use scarce resources that we get out of the soil. The soil apparently is owned by something or someone. And then if somebody owns it and plants their flag on it, somebody else wants to plant their flag on it. And that's how wars occur. Energy and war, they're just together. And as long as we use fossil fuels, energy and conflict are going to be together. Every time we fuel our cars, we are financing a conflict somewhere. It's a harsh truth, but it has to be told. Third issue with energy is that 2.5 billion people live in energy poverty today. This is the kitchen of the mother of my friend in my youth, Omar. I grew up not in the Netherlands or in Belgium. I grew up in Niger in West Africa. My parents were development workers. Omar was my dearest friend at that time, he passed away a couple years ago. His mother passed away last year. And she is one of the 2.5 billion people in the world that has to cook like this. And this implies that they have to go out and collect wood for being able to cook. Now, if you have to collect wood, biomass, for cooking, which is the primary energy use of your family, this method takes about 6 hours per day for mainly the women. Now imagine you spending 6 hours of every day that you're here collecting the energy that you need to survive. That means that those 6 hours cannot be spent on education or on earning an income or on raising your children or on spending time with your loved ones. So that means that if you live in energy poverty, chances are that you're going to remain poor for the rest of your life. So what I learned as a kid was that energy is not a given. This is a picture that my mother took in my youth in Dosso in Niger. And the boy in the middle is me, and my brother Omid is sitting next to me, and our neighbor Amadou, and we're watching television. And we were the lucky ones because we had one of the 2 televisions in our town. And we had 3 shows every week, 1 national broadcast, and then we'd be sitting in front of the TV, and then we'd flick the switch, and then something would happen, or nothing would happen. Because energy was not a given. We had blackouts every day. And it was just, we had to take the gamble. Is it going to be there or not? A perspective on energy that was given to me in 2007 by Larry Stout. At that time, he was the director of the Dundalk Institute of Technology in Ireland, was this one. He showed me this. He asked me, what is this? Well, it's a peak, obviously, but what does it say? Now, this peak shows something extremely interesting. It blew my mind. It actually changed my career. And that is that this shows fossil fuel consumption by humans throughout the history and the future of mankind. And it blew my mind because it shows that whatever we call alternative today is actually conventional. We have been using these energies, renewable energies, for thousands of years. The actual alternative energy is fossil fuel. Because thousands of years ago, we used fire to cook. Then some other years ago, we used sailboats to discover new continents. Windmills in the town of Zaandam, where I was born actually, we had 650 windmills a couple of centuries ago. So it was a 100% renewable energy-based system. And it's not until industrialization, actually, that we started to use fossil fuels. Why? Because their energy concentration is so high that by setting them on fire, we could release all that energy at once. And for the first time in our lives, we had energy at the flick of a switch. And that's how we could melt steel, build factories, move, fly, etc. And now we are here. So that means that we are up for a roller coaster ride down to 1 million times less fossil fuels. And we do that with technologies that we know, and who knows what's going to happen in the next years. So this is basically a short history of energy. A couple of months ago, I had an amazing occasion. It was April 22nd, and April 22nd is Earth Day. And on Earth Day, I was invited to India to meet with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, to engage into a conversation on energy, on resources, on climate, on balance, on conflict and conflict resolution. And His Holiness was so clear. We will only resolve these conflicts once we stop exploiting our planet's resources. He also really reinforced me in the idea that energy should be considered to be a fundamental human right, and that it must be the right of every human being dwelling on this planet to have access to modern forms of energy to live a life that is worthy. This is my mission. This is what I dedicate myself to. I decided a couple years ago, it's okay if I go bankrupt. It's worth it. It's okay if I lose my house. It's worth it. This is something to fight for. But this requires another mindset than we have today. And the mindset I actually found in the books of Richard Buckminster Fuller. Bucky said in 1969, in a little book called Operation Manual for Spaceship Earth, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. if you want to change something, build a new model that's going to make the existing model obsolete. And for me, this became a life's mantra, because we have a finite amount of energy in our bodies. I had a lunch today, and I know that that lunch was around a half a kilowatt hour. So that's the amount of energy that I can spend on something. I can either spend that energy on saying what's wrong with the world, or spend it on building something that might work. And I tried to choose the latter. And where can I derive inspiration from? Actually, the inspiration mostly comes from nature. If I walk through a forest, I witness an energy system that is 100% renewables based. It's circular, it's waste free, it's regenerative, it's decentralized, it's ownerless, it works perfectly and has done for millions of years. So what can we learn from the forest? It seeks balance by itself. Our business models mostly are designed to disrupt balance, because the larger the difference between supply and demand, the more money somebody can make. But if we design our business models to seek balance, then we can have an entirely different market. And some 7 years ago, I started with the idea of the Internet of Energy. Now, I don't know which ones of you know about the Internet, but it's an amazing thing. I've heard it's going to be really big in these next few years. No, you know, the Internet of Energy is basically a global system where everybody can be interconnected. It's a distributed system. And I came up with this idea because I myself was raised by an Internet pioneer, my mother. My mother in 1989 went online, way before most of us went online, because she believed this would be really big. Literally, she told me at one point, "I'm fine with you playing outside so much, but I would love for you to spend some more time with the computer, because that's going to be something." And I'm telling my kids the exact opposite, and that proves my mother right. Now, what happened to the Internet? This is a map of the Internet in 1973. By then, it was still called ARPANET. It had 36 users worldwide. That's it. Then in 1989, this guy, Tim Berners-Lee, wrote the www protocol. And you know what that protocol did? It allowed us to make any choice of technology that we could and apply it, buy the computers that we wanted to buy, and be connected to one another and be able to translate our data streams to one another so that we could understand each other. So that was the interconnection of the world. And this caused that last April we welcomed the 5th billion internet user globally. So from 36 users in 1973 to 5 billion users in 2022. That's massive growth. And one of the main reasons why that was possible is that the internet itself is not managed by planning and control. Planning and control is a system that we used to have with our paper encyclopedia, which was a centralized system with a publisher that you had to go through to share knowledge with the world. And then we had GitHub and Wikipedia and Medium and whatever kind of channels that allowed us to have a sense and response-based system. So instead of the classical orchestra we just looked at, where everybody's got their sheet right in front of them and reads music perfectly and has their instruments tuned perfectly, and then the director does this and then they play, instead of that, it became a jam session. Now, this exact same principle we're applying on the energy system, and the IOE is built upon these principles by making sure that it is distributed. Now, in a distributed system, you cannot tell whether a user is a consumer or producer. Everything can be anything. It is designed to liberate people from big tech, from big energy, from big interests, I would say. It is designed to be 100% regenerative and based on 100% renewable resources. And it's designed to bring people together, because it's together that we bring the system in balance. So everybody's being incentivized to add to the balance of the entire system. And that's a market model shift. And this year, for the first time, we're going to be allowed to test it and to actually build it. But it's taken years. But also, thanks to digital technologies and how they came up in the past years, we are for the first time able to build it. system looks like this. It looks like a flock of birds. Now, if you look at this beautiful flock of birds, 20,000 birds in this case, which one is the boss? Which one is the planning and control manager? Which one does navigation? They all do everything. And that's the beauty of it. It's a self-balancing and self-sustaining system. And I found my friends and brothers, actually, when we started with this project for this conference, because this festival in itself can lead by example. Imagine that every car owner that has an electric vehicle can be a source of power to the entire festival site. Now we can build it. Imagine that every tent is covered in a thin film that harvests sunlight and translates that into usable energy for us. Imagine even the movements of people dancing, creating an energy source for the peripherics around the festival site. And imagine us together understanding energy in a deeper way than we did before. I firmly believe that nature has all the answers. Ermi van Oers, who is a dear friend of mine, who couldn't be here today due to COVID, by the way, but she is the designer, the inventor of the living light. She's an artist. She was raised as an artist, she was educated as an artist, and she looks at nature like an artist. And she looked at a tree, and then she posed herself the question, but what is the difference between these leaves of the tree and a solar panel? Isn't it the case that every plant is actually harvesting energy from the sun and translates that into some form of usable energy? And that's how she designed living light. So, yeah, you see it here and it works. It powers LED lights just by plants. These movements are transformational. They go very, very deep. And I want to invite you, because in October, we're organizing Transform Hackathon, the first edition. And Transform is all about transformative energy systems that are distributed by design, that are 100% renewables based, that seek balance by their design. And if you have an idea, if you want to contribute in some way, if you have a team, if you're nerds, I love nerds, be welcome, be part of Transform Hackathon. And that's the end of my talk. I want to invite you all to dream, and to dream big, but most of all to develop your dreams into action, because it's in the action that you make the difference. And the power to change the world is right here in this room. It is in the choices that you make. Thank you so much.